This week's Imaginarium is dedicated to the memory of actress Cheryl Downey.
This is a presentation from the Supernaut Network.
Welcome to the Imaginarium, the show where art, technology, and creativity intersect and combine to forge a conversation that can only be found in the Imaginarium. I'm your host, Scott Colbert, and joining me, as usual, is my co-host, the horror nerd himself, Todd Starouch.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
Pretty good, Todd. How you doing this week?
Well, it was a rough week.
I understand that. Why don't you talk about that? Talk about Cheryl a little bit. Since we're dedicating the show to her, and you're a close friend of hers, I thought it'd be fitting to for you to remember her.
I appreciate that. Cheryl Downey was pretty much a fixture in the local indie horror community here in New Jersey. Everybody at the conventions knew who she was. She was a beautiful, vivacious person who was just very friendly and nice to everybody. And we shared a lot of great times at conventions over the years, and we became close friends. And so it was sad news for me this week when I found out she passed away in a tragic accident on Monday. But what did my heart good was I saw the true power of social media when I posted about it on Facebook, and my Facebook, Twitter, everything just lit up with positive thoughts from everyone who knew her. So I want to give a public thank you to everyone who had kind words. You can go to my Facebook page and the Horror Nerd page for information. I posted an article from the Bergen Record about her there. And I'm going to miss her greatly.
Somewhat awkwardly, I do want to wish you a very happy birthday as well. It was your birthday this week.
Yes, my birthday was yesterday. Can you believe I'm 29 years old?
Yeah, a Jack Benny 29, we know.
Yeah, well, so it was a sad birthday, but she'll live on in our memories, which is what we have of her, and that's that.
Well, she was so young. She was 37.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And, just one of those freak things. It was a freak train accident. I don't have all the details. It's still under investigation. So that's really all the news I have. I spoke to a reporter about it yesterday. And as I said, the Record did a nice piece, and people can go to northjersey.com and you'll find it there on that page and on my Facebook page as well. But yeah, it was when I got the news, it was the absolute last thing I had expected.
We can put a link on that on the show page as well.
That'd be great.
Well, joining us today is someone who's no stranger to the Supernauts Network. He's been on the Debate Show, and he's been on the former Shut Up Kids podcast. John Ary. He's a film critic, and he has his own Roku channel. Now, how many people can you say that about? They have their own Roku channel.
Well, it's not as hard as you might think to set up your own Roku channel if you know the right places to go.
Well, we may talk about that later on, because that's
great.
Kind of interesting.
I'm a big believer in Roku, so yeah, absolutely.
Well, and welcome to the Imaginarium, John.
Hey, thanks a lot, and happy birthday, Todd.
Thank you.
Why don't you just give us a little bit of a background? When did you start? When did you decide that you wanted to critique films?
Well, it was probably about 3 years ago. I started over at ain'titcool.com, and the way I got in there, I was a toy geek, big toy nerd. I had a big toy blog at the time. They agreed to let me run a weekly toy column. And my background is like in video production, and so I was like, man, I'd love to make some videos for Ain't It Cool, because get all this great exposure. What would people like videos about? And the best I could come up with was movies, since that's kind of their bread and butter, and that just kind of got me into going to movies and living the life of a part-time on the side movie critic. So it was a lot of fun.
Now, last week we were talking with a couple of filmmakers from New Jersey, and we started talking about, Todd did actually start talking about some of this criticisms he's gotten about being a film critic, and that how he never went to film school, so he can't be a film critic, and yada yada yada. What do you think about that? Do you really need to go to a film school to be to critique film?
No, because I think everybody critiques film, whether they've gone to the school to receive a formal education on film, or if they just like to watch a movie every now and then. It's the greatest thing and the worst thing about enjoying movies and having the internet is that anybody can have access to a blog, to a website, to a YouTube channel, to a podcast to get their voice heard, which means it's really getting pretty crowded out there in the world of the internet for people with opinions on movies. So any people are going to talk about movies, whether they have the internet or they're just having a conversation in the lobby at the theater. So. To me, I think anybody can do it, but the ones that really thrive and survive are the ones that have something interesting to say, and also think, I don't know, with the precise logic. I think one of the things I absolutely hate are when people, and sometimes I do it, they see a movie and they can't quite put into words why they liked or disliked the movie. And it's the ones that can kind of cut through the BS and sort of the early layers of a movie, getting past the special effects or getting past who's in the movie and getting to the heart of what made the movie interesting or different or bad.
John, like what Scott is referring to is, I have a website. I write about movies a lot on my Facebook page, and I really just want to share things that, like movies and TV shows and stuff that I love with other people that I think might enjoy them. And I do occasionally get some blowback, what gives you the right to review films? And I'm like, well, the fact that I have a brain. I mean, I don't even know how to respond to that. I don't do it because I think I'm cool or I'm necessarily smarter than anyone else. I just do it because I love film so much. I want to share what I like or don't like about movies. I think when people say that, it's ridiculous, and I just don't get it.
Isn't that the worst? I mean, just the fact that what gives you the right to be a critic of movie critics? Like, it makes no sense. I'm
going to say that next time.
Yeah, I love the internet. I love social media, but in a lot of ways, it's like I said, it's the good and the bad of having access. Anybody can do it. Doesn't mean everybody should, but everyone can do it. And it's great to have a voice and be able to, if you want to write an article, if you want to write, a 6,000 word essay on the Entourage movie, there's a place for you to put that somewhere on the internet. But I mean, does anyone really want to read that? I don't know.
Yeah, I could think of a few places to put something like that.
You're right. Social media has basically given everyone a voice, and I cry myself to sleep thinking about that sometimes. But so many reviews that I read, it's the same angry guy in a black heavy metal t-shirt standing in front of his DV collection screaming about how everything sucks. And I think that's what makes it difficult for guys like, for the three of us who put some thought into it when we write a review. And if we don't like something, well, here's why we don't like it. or why we love something. Here's why we love it, not just sort of black or white.
Yeah, I think that's really, really true. And frankly, guys, like I've become kind of disenchanted a little bit with doing the film critique stuff on the side. It's something I do for a hobby, and it's something I do for fun. But it's kind of gotten to the point where it's feeling really redundant, where there's so many voices yelling at me saying, here's my opinion on this, you should read this, or here's my opinion on this, you should listen to my podcast about it. Like it's kind of, I feel kind of inundated really in a sea of voices, and it's kind of made me reevaluate, how I put my voice out. And I've taken a break. I've probably taken like a 3 or 4 month break just from putting anything out, just because there's got to be like a better way or another way to like kind of cut through the clutter. But it's really, really difficult, especially for someone starting fresh, who wants to do this and possibly, make, a few dollars at it. And I stress few dollars at it. It's really hard to get your voice out there. I shouldn't say it. It's pretty easy to get your voice out there, but it's really hard to cut through the clutter and make it something that's interesting or remarkable.
Exactly. I agree completely.
Yeah, it's very hard to get an audience and then maintain and keep that audience. We're so inundated with information, like you said, and not just with movies, but with everything. Sports, news. I mean, when CNN started and they were the first 24-hour news channel, that was the beginning of this overload of information. I think it's just made all of us pretty fucking neurotic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that's one of the reasons I started experimenting a little bit. I tried to put out, I put out the Roku channel to see what kind of traction I could get there with that, because I haven't really seen a lot of people putting their content on Roku. And I think it's something that has a very quiet but gradually swelling user base. So I think the key in the coming months and years is just going to be keeping an eye out for new technology, or keeping an eye out for new platforms, and trying to hop on them early. And maybe they pan out. Chances are most of those platforms aren't going to pan out, but it's a really exciting time, to be doing this kind of stuff.
It really is. And me, see, I embrace social media. I know that like half the people who log on to Facebook do it just to bitch about Facebook. If you use social media properly, I think you can get a lot out of it. And speaking only for myself, I'd rather have like, I don't know, I'm pulling numbers out of the air, 20 or 30 core people who read my posts and listen to what I have to say and are engaged, than 1,000 people who clicked like on my page but never interact with me in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Because the interaction, that's where it's really fun. And I left Ain't It Cool like a year and a half ago, and that's the thing I missed most about it, was the interactive nature of it in the what they call the talkbacks, or the comment section, because they the comments were robust, and most of them were very scathing and critical, and it was always a challenge to try and win people over, because especially on Ain't It Cool, where there's a lot of negativity in the talkbacks, that was always the really exciting part, is kind of cutting through that and getting to know some of the commenters, hopefully changing their opinion about you. Because sort of when you start off over at Ain't It Cool, you kind of start with like a negative balance, and you really gotta prove yourself over time. But yeah, I mean, that's what I miss the most about having sort of a large platform, is just the interactivity. But I mean, it's nice though, because moving to a smaller platform with less people, you definitely figure out like who are your core folks that really care what you have to say, and it's also nice to interact with them. But yeah, I definitely miss the numbers and the commenting and the back and forth. And I think the Supernauts is the perfect example of the splintering and the fracturing of these communities. It's 5-6 years ago, you would have much larger sites and you'd have fewer of them. But over time, they've definitely splintered off and made their own little subsects and their own sub websites and sort of their own smaller fiefdoms. And I think the Supernauts is a great example of that. And you're seeing a lot of these big guys starting to fall, like Chud is pretty much over. That I think that happened this week. Film Threat went down in a not in a blaze of glory, but a total whimper. You're seeing people splintering off, and like I said, it's great. It's democratizing everyone's voices, but it's I don't know. It's kind of no longer are we pooling as a collective. We're definitely kind of tapering off into our own little niches.
Do you think that helps or hurts?
It goes both ways, because again, anybody can have a podcast and anyone can start their own website. It's so easy to build a website now, and pool it with a ton of content because the content's so readily available now as well. People are really kind of sharing that content, and it's weird. You can have 20 different movie websites, and more than likely all 20 are going to have the exact same stories and the exact same information. So it really comes down to the voices, and I think it's the unique voices and the people who leave an impression on you. It's their websites that people are going to keep going back to more and more, and I see those growing. But again, it's really hard to get your voice out there and make it unique. That's the main problem I'm seeing now, is just how you make things unique and how you stand apart from the crowd.
I couldn't agree more. There are so many blogs and podcasts and content out there. And John, you brought up a great point about content. With my own website, I just write about the things that I personally like. It's selfish, yes, but it's a labor of love. I tell everyone there are plenty of giant websites out there where you can go for all your news and all your up-to-the-minute set photos or whatever. I don't have that kind of time or staff or what have you. So I just write about things that are important to me. And I hope that there are people out there that follow along.
Yeah, and that website is like uniquely you, and that's really cool. And I would caution anyone looking to start their own blog or their own website, and you think you can do it better. I would just caution you, like, before you do it, really find your angle and make sure no one else is doing it, because otherwise you're just totally wasting your time. And unless that blog is something that's uniquely you, that you're putting out the stuff that you only, the stuff that you find most interesting. And that's not the same old boring set pics. Man, I am so tired of set pics. I'm so tired of, behind the scenes junk, that guys on the street, snap with their iPhone, and like that's a story now. I hate that. But find something that's unique to you and roll with that. But until you can do that, don't bother. don't bother with it.
No, I think if Abe and Dio and I had any idea of what we were getting into when we started the Supernauts, we may have thought twice. But ignorance is bliss, and it's actually worked out very well for us. But you're very right about that. It's so easy to get dissatisfied with something and say, oh, well, I can do it better, but not take into account the amount of time and the amount of expense it can take to maintain it.
Yeah, absolutely. I left Ain't It Cool because I was like, man, I think I can do this better. That website doesn't look so hot, and it's sometimes, it's kind of run, poorly, and there's not a lot of sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, and it's kind of annoying, I'm like, I'm gonna start my own website that's gonna be better, and it's gonna have better content. And I did that, and after 6 months in, I'm like, what am I doing? This is terrible. Why would I ever start a website? This is an awful idea. It was awesome for meeting people. It was great because people would hit me up on Twitter, or they would write me and be like, "Hey, I'd really like to review movies. What do I need to do?" I'm like, "Just send me a review, man. Come on, send me a column, whatever you want to do. Just send it to me." And that really makes people one put their money where their mouth is. Like, oh, I could be a film critic, yeah, whatever. Oh, okay, cool. Then write something. I want to read it. And there's just nothing holding people back, which is awesome. And I got to meet some great, really creative people who sent me stuff to post, which is awesome. But man, finding unique content that's not just regarbled garbage from somewhere else, it can be really tough, man. It's a labor, and there's not much money involved. Like that, there's hardly any money involved. And it's just a time suck. It's a money suck. And unless you really know what you're doing and you have a laser-like focus, I just don't think it's worth doing.
We've talked about movie sites. Let's actually talk about some movies. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was the Mad Max Fury Road movie. And specifically, I have not seen a movie get the kind of repeat business that I've seen with Fury Road, not for a long, long time. I think maybe the last movie that I saw or that came out where people were going to see it 2, 3, and 4 times was probably either Dark Knight or Avatar. So it's been a while. Well, what is it about Mad Max, do you think, that's getting people to keep going back to it?
I think there's like a purity to it. There's something about that movie that doesn't really feel like it's corporate in any way. Like there's no lunchboxes accompanying it. You can't buy a Mad Max action figure. You're not going to find the Mad Max McDonald's menu item or whatever. Like there's something really just genuine about it. The action's really good. The performances are really strong. It's unique. And it's done really, it's masterful in almost every level of its execution. And I think we're just really lacking like pure action, simple, unadulterated action movies, and especially ones that are I guess evocative on a couple of levels. I mean, a lot of people will talk about how the female characters in the movie are kind of written in an empowering way. There isn't a lot of gender bias in the movie, which sucks to have that conversation be in 2015 that we have to talk about that, but I mean, I love how the main the heroine of the movie, Furiosa. I mean, she could be a female, she could be a male. It didn't matter. She was just a really good character, played expertly by a really terrific actress. So I think it's a really great breath of fresh air to have a movie like that. That's just really. There's not. I don't know many people who didn't like the movie have seen it, and the reasons for not liking it, the few that I know who didn't like it, just don't make any sense to me. So I don't know. I think it's really rare for a movie to hit on all cylinders on all those different levels. And I miss the days of hard R action in the cineplexes, and especially hard R that's done really well. You just don't really see that anymore.
I haven't seen it yet, unfortunately, but two things, John, that you said that resonated with me. One, about the female empowerment aspect of it. I was astonished that no sooner had the movie come out than there were a couple of camps, like the female camp, either loving or hating the movie, and then a small group of men that didn't seem to like that the central character was female. And I'm like, are we kidding? I mean, really? That's what we're talking about? Not how George Miller at his age made, an astonishing achievement. How he pulled off what's basically a 2-hour car chase. None of that. People are worried about gender stereotypes. I mean, really? And come on. And then the criticism of the movie, I don't even have to have seen the movie to comment on something you said about the criticism. Whenever there's a big popular movie, it seems that there's a group of cool kids that have to say how they didn't like it. And I think it really is just to be contrarian. There were some people that pointed out, well, the action is amazing. It's a little thin on plot, maybe, and background. Okay, I haven't seen it. I'll judge for myself. But the people on Facebook, like, I hated Mad Max. I don't see why anybody liked it. Okay, I don't have time for you.
Well, hey, Facebook again gives everyone a voice to be a critic, and I'm definitely not going to give that guy's opinion much credence if he can't back up why it's bad or why it didn't work for him. Let's get into some specifics, guys, about why you don't like this movie. That's what I want. Let's have that conversation, and if they can't have that conversation, then F them.
Exactly. Thank you.
This Memorial Day weekend was the lowest grossing Memorial Day weekend in decades. You think that's because we have all this streaming media now, and with Netflix and even DVRing and video on demand and whatnot, that we're going to see diminishing box office returns?
I don't think so. I mean, I think as long as you put out something that people want to see, they'll go and see it. And until the studios start, and I don't think they will, but until they start launching their A titles on a streaming platform the same day they release in theaters, I just don't see any reason why the box office return should be going down that much. I think a lot of it has to do with the studios cannibalizing their own films. I mean, you look at a movie like 50 Shades of Grey, right? That was like a big deal for the studios in February. I think that released on Valentine's Day or somewhere around there. It's already hit. It's already hit Blu-ray and DVD and streaming platforms, and I think they did that like mid-May. So I mean, if the window for seeing your big AAA titles is 2 or 3 months, like why not just wait? It doesn't make any sense. But you look at a movie like Avengers. That was a movie. I'm sorry, Avengers 2, Age of Ultron. That was a movie that I couldn't wait to see. I was really excited to see it, and I saw it, and I that wasn't a movie that I was going to miss. On the opening weekend, mainly because of spoilers. I didn't want anything spoiled for me, but two, I really wanted to see it. So I think as long as studios keep putting out movies that people want to see, they're going to be fine. But I think the problem is we're not exactly getting a lot of movies that people are that excited to see.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. We have a few, we are always going to have those big tentpole movies. I think for this year it was Avengers and the upcoming Star Wars film. But as far as Memorial Day, I also think, there's so many factors. I can't explain it. There's so many choices now when it comes to entertainment. And let's face it, movie tickets are getting relentlessly higher. I certainly can't go nearly to as many movies as I used to. And I still love the theater experience. Yes, I have Netflix and all that good stuff, a nice flat screen TV, but nothing for me will ever beat the big screen, the incredible sound, the popcorn, and everything. I still love to go to the movies. I just can't afford to do it as often as I would like.
What are the movie tickets going for in Jersey now?
Probably it averages probably around $15.
Wow.
Yeah. I saw Avengers in IMAX 3D, and that was a little over $20.
Wow.
That's insane.
See, and the 3D isn't even that good on. How was the 3D for you?
I didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
To be honest, I like the big screen and the huge sound, the surround sound. The 3D, I can't even recall it. And I'm not saying that to be funny. I don't even recall the 3D having an impact. Certainly not like the 3D of Avatar, which I thought was incredible. Avengers, I didn't even notice it really.
Right. That drives me nuts. Like, what's the point of spending the extra bucks? And in a lot of times they're almost making you blow your money on the 3D experience. I mean, if you want to see it IMAX, it's almost like you're held hostage that you have to see it in 3D sometimes, and it's just not fair. And I don't know. I think it's a terrible business practice. And we really started to see a drop off in 3D screenings over the last year and a half. It seemed like it was really hot and heavy, 3 or 4 years ago, but it's really dropped off. And I think that the public's appetite for it is just not very strong unless it's a movie that was made specifically for 3D. And until they start putting out more stuff that was made specifically for 3D, I just don't think people are that excited to spend the extra money on it. And I think there's some resentment when you're almost forcing them to blow an extra, $3, $4, or $5 on a movie ticket when they don't really get any added benefit out of it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And unless it's a big movie like Avatar, where the 3D was fantastic, it really seems like a waste. I saw the first Hobbit movie. I didn't see it in 3D. I saw it in the 48 frames per second edition, or whatever the hell you want to call it. And I thought that was so horrible. It looked so bad that I really have no interest. And I hope there's no other films that ever come out at 48 FPS again, because they just look like shit.
Yeah, it was an interesting experiment, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you can't fault Peter Jackson for trying something different, but I think it really it kind of made the movie suffer, because the CGI really looked like CGI when it's that crystal clear. It's so much more noticeable.
Yeah, well, the nice thing about 48 frames per second is it's really easy to dial it back to 24 frames per second. So, that was probably a misstep by a few folks, but hey, it was an interesting experiment. I'm glad he at least tried it.
Yeah, I applaud him, for trying something new. But I'm like you guys both just said, I'm almost glad it didn't work, because it was so horrible. I'd hate to see Hollywood jump on that bandwagon like they did with 3D. Avatar came out, and then we had silly comedies coming out in 3D. I'm like, all right, that's enough of that.
Yeah, well, and then you look at a case like the last G.I. Joe movie, where they actually pulled it from the schedule to convert it into 3D, which made everyone think, oh, well, this G.I. Joe movie, this is going to be awful if they're pulling it from theaters. I think it was like a month or two out, if I remember right, from when it was supposed to open, and then they released it like 6 or 8 months later, and the 3D looked terrible, and most of the movie was shot in really dark spaces with lots of action, quick cuts, which totally rendered the 3D into crap. So it killed the momentum of the movie. Not that the movie was that great, but putting the emphasis on 3D, I understand that there's an appeal to some markets for it, and it might help your bottom line. But holy moly, I really think it's doing more harm to not just the movies themselves, but the movie-going experience, and I think the future bottom lines for the studios.
You talked about spoilers a little bit before, and we had mentioned that when we were tweeting back and forth earlier today, and you actively try to avoid spoilers, and I try to do that too. But when you're on Facebook and 90% of the people that you follow are film fanatics, and they just throw these things up, particularly the stuff from the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
That seems to be the hot thing right now. How do you manage to avoid that?
You don't really. I mean, you have to actively not watch any trailers now, because the trailers are actively spoiling the movies themselves. I mean, the last Terminator trailer, had a pretty big spoiler in the plot, and I didn't even see the trailer. I saw stupid gifs of the trailer showing up in social media and places where I'm like, guys, what are you doing? Why are you trying to ruin this movie for me? It's one thing when you have anonymous people on Facebook or Twitter spoiling the movies for you, but when the studios themselves, put every bit of the plot into a 2.5 or 3 minute trailer, giving you pretty much the complete outline for the movie. I mean, I don't know how you get around not, I don't know how you get around going into a movie without some part of the movie already laid out for you and ruined. It's just it's really annoying, and man, it makes me want to quit Facebook. It makes me want to put a virus on some of these websites that put the spoilers in the title of their articles. It's just awful. I don't know how you get around it other than not going to the websites that actively go out and ruin things in the title of the articles, not going on Facebook. I don't know. It's getting to be a real problem. And again, it's kind of taking all the fun of going to the movies out for me, or at least the kinds of movies that I normally like to go out and see.
I totally agree with what you're saying, John, and I have never in my life posted a deliberate spoiler. Like, I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan and a huge Walking Dead fan, and I've battled people over the concept of spoilers. I would never ever post an important plot point in a Facebook post or a tweet without saying, read no further. We're going to talk about spoilers. But having said that, 3 days later, when I'm talking about an episode and somebody goes, oh, whoa, hey, stop. I have it on my DVR. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. Well, you know what? I don't want to base my movie discussions and TV discussions around your schedule. At what point do we draw that line where we're not allowed to talk about something? Like Age of Ultron opened, a month and a half ago? Am I allowed to talk about it yet because someone out there might not have seen it? I think there is a line somewhere. You're right. If someone's going to put a spoiler in the title of an article, that's just a dick move right there, But if you're going to peruse movie websites, you're going to come across a spoiler here or there. It's inevitable,
I wrote an article on one of David Cronenberg's early movies. I think it may have been Rabbit, and I pretty much laid out the entire plot, spoilers and all, and then I got bitched at because somebody hadn't seen the movie, and I'm like, the movie's 40 years old. I think we can call a moratorium on spoilers on anything that's you can say it's decades old. People just get so ridiculous with the spoilers. You just want to smack them upside the head.
Yeah, totally. But at the same time, I mean, you see a 30-second spot for a lot of these movies, and you have a pretty strong idea of exactly what's going to happen in this movie, right? So, like, let's say, for instance, San Andreas, right? That was the big Memorial Day weekend. Again, not a lot of plot probably going on there. Rock is a guy who saves people. There's a bad emergency, and he goes around trying to save people, and maybe his family too. Who knows? But there's, after seeing the 30-second spot for it, the trailer, like you know what that movie is. Like, it's already in a way just been spoiled for you. It shows you all the important character beats. Not that there's probably like a ton of character beats in a action movie like that, but or like another example would be Poltergeist, which is a freaking remake. You have a pretty strong idea of exactly how this movie is going to play out over the course of its 90-minute or 2-hour runtime. So, I mean, that's part of the problem too, is like, maybe not so much with television, because that seems to be much more of a writer's medium, much more than movies now. But, going into movies, it's pretty much spoiled for you. I mean, something that's starting to really weigh me down. I really enjoy the Marvel movies, and I look forward to each one that comes out. But they're so tied to the comic continuity, and there's so many people picking the comic continuity apart that you pretty much know everything that's going to happen in all the Marvel movies now and until like 2020. So it's getting to the point where I'm really hoping they start fishing some original plot lines out for some of these films that aren't taken directly from the comics. So at least they're somewhat surprising when you watch them, and they haven't already been picked apart by every comic fanboy, a million times already.
John, again, I have a little bit different take. I'm not a huge comic book collector, but I'm a fan and I follow the storylines. I've waited my entire life to see some of these characters and scenarios played out in live action. So do I know, for example, what the Infinity Stones are? Yeah. Do I know, do I know certain things like that? Yeah. But I want to see Thanos put that Infinity Gauntlet on and wreak havoc, like up on the big screen. So that doesn't bother me nearly as much. It's not like giving away the ending of the Crying Game, But again, this is the beauty of what we do. We just see, we just view it a little bit differently. That's all.
Yeah, that's true. And as someone that who read the Infinity Gauntlet as a kid, and I am excited to see Thanos beat up all of the Marvel superheroes, in one foul swoop. That's going to be amazing. But I feel like we've got a pretty strong idea of how Ant-Man's going to play out. We have a pretty strong idea of what the next Spider-Man movie might entail. They'll probably be, if they go with Green Goblin again, I will shoot my brains out, man. I want to see something new and something fresh and something that hadn't been tried before. And I think that's one of the reasons those last two Spider-Man movies just didn't really fare very well, is because they didn't really bring anything new to anything. They didn't have any kind of comment to make on the character or the genre itself. I don't know. I'm just I don't know. I want to see something new and something fresh in those movies. Bring something new to the game.
Are we at a point where we've had too many remakes?
We've absolutely had too many remakes. Absolutely. Because I think the problem is that now films are getting remade that are really good films to begin with. I mean, Poltergeist is a prime example. There's really no reason to update Poltergeist. That movie was really, really strong on its own. And unless you have something new or interesting to say about, I don't know, the ghost, scary ghost genre in general, there's just no real reason to remake a movie like that. I think another example is the upcoming just announced Big Trouble in Little China with The Rock. Like that, the original Big Trouble in Little China, that's lightning in a bottle, man. You can't make that movie nowadays. And to try and take that story and make it new again and make it fresh without really understanding why that movie should have never been made in the first place, and how that makes no sense on any level. Like that movie should not have been greenlit because it's way too weird. The hero doesn't even do anything heroic. He doesn't even contribute to anything that happens, on the positive side for the good guys. He's a total dunce, which made it amazing. And if you're going to put The Rock in it, I just don't understand why you would remake that movie. It makes no sense to me. And we're not even getting to the part talking about some of the racial stereotypes, in that movie. Like, you just can't do that nowadays. And I just don't really see that working very well. The only time a remake works for me is when it's the original film is a film that hasn't been seen a lot, or it wasn't pulled off quite as well as the new filmmaker thinks it should have been. Otherwise, I just don't see any real reason to make a remake.
Oh boy, where do I begin? I am not nearly as militant about remakes as some of my friends are. I do agree with you wholeheartedly that there are too many, and most of them are pointless. There's only two things that make me a little crazy. When someone just makes a blanket statement, remakes suck. Okay, I'll trot out things like The Fly or The Thing or other remakes, and then they reluctantly agree, well, those are okay. And speaking of Big Trouble in Little China, oh my God, the internet is in absolute apoplexy over that. And while I grasp why, when people say things like, oh, they're going to ruin that movie. Well, wait a second. Unless they're going to digitally insert The Rock's face into the original movie, how are they ruining it? That's where I sort of diverge. The remake is in no way going to diminish my love of the original. I'll just never go see the remake. Same thing with Poltergeist. I could care less about the Poltergeist remake because I still have the original. So when people have these meltdowns, Michael Bay is ruining my childhood. How? Did he erase all the original Mutant Ninja Turtles comic books? How is he ruining your childhood? I think that's where maybe it gets a little bit silly. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, anytime someone claims someone ruined their childhood, I just want to give them a big old middle finger because I'm so tired of people claiming that. It's the dumbest thing. But, I think when you have something interesting or something new to add to a movie, then you have a real reason for remaking it. Like, I think the last RoboCop remake, I don't think it's a very good movie. I think there's some really interesting scenes and some very legitimate questions that it brings up that the original didn't quite broach on, and it tried to alter things a little bit. But I think with this, I tend to think that's a movie that was severely harmed by studio interference, where you had a really capable filmmaker trying to do something poignant with a movie, and then the studio coming in and being like, no, it needs more guns, needs more action, need more callbacks to the original. I think it's really hard to make a big budget remake nowadays without the studio coaxing the filmmaker into throwing in lots of callbacks to get that synergy between the original movie and the new movie, to get the marketing lined up right. So you're constantly bringing up that original at the same time that you're promoting the new one, and almost in a way kind of fusing the two together. I absolutely hate that. And I think that's where the originals get harmed just a little bit. And I think it's a short-term harmful effect. I don't think it's rarely. I can't think of a movie where the original is suffered from a remake in the long term. But I think that's what people absolutely hate the most, is just having that original fused with the new one. It's kind of hard. It's definitely harmful on a number of different levels.
Okay, fair enough.
I think with a movie like Big Problems in Little China, that's a movie that's aged pretty well. All things considered, the effects and everything that they did in that movie still pretty much hold up today. And I think probably that's my only barometer for whether a movie should be remade or not, is if it can be updated and made a little bit different, because the original is a little bit showing the zipper up the monster's back.
And I think the Fly and the Thing, as we were talking about earlier, I think those are the prime examples of how you do a remake, where you have the central conceit and then you do something completely different with it, or put it into a different context. But I just don't see a lot of studio executives thinking in those terms anymore. I think they're much more concerned with the IP or the property license, more than trying to make something interesting or creative or artistic out of it.
Yeah, I think the last good remake I saw was the Maniac remake. We talked about that a little bit last week. To go from Joe Spinell to Elijah Wood, I mean, that's a big enough difference in and of itself.
Yeah.
But doing it in first person, setting it in Los Angeles, and it was different enough. And I absolutely love the remake. I think I like it more than the original. But that's the way, in my mind, a remake should be. There's a little hints of the original here and there, but it's its own thing.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Exactly. One that did that for me, and God, I took so much shit from some of my friends for this. I liked the Evil Dead remake. I don't worship the original the way many people do. I like it, but I don't revere it. I thought the recovering, the drug addict angle of the remake was an interesting twist. I like that it was a little bit grittier and less campy. I get that camp is part of the charm of the original. I totally get it. But I agree with you, Scott. Sometimes, you do a different take. You don't try to duplicate the original too much. You can get away with a good remake. I always say, just give me a good film. I don't care. I don't ever write anything off simply because it's a remake, except maybe for, Big Trouble in Little China or Psycho. When I heard they were doing Psycho as a shot-for-shot remake, what is the effing point of that? We already have that movie. What, you're doing it in color? Okay,
You're doing it in color, and you get to see Vince Vaughn jerk off. I mean, ooh, isn't that exciting?
I'm pretty sure I could find that anyway. Just saying.
But if there was one movie that you would actually want to see remade, John, what would it be?
Boy, it'd probably be something smaller, something unique. Oh God, what's the name of it? Danger Diabolic. It's a 60s Mario Bava, based on an Italian comic movie or a comic book. But it was made at a really low budget, but it was a really cool premise in that the Italian superhero, Danger Diabolic, he's a bad guy who has very few virtues to him. He's pretty much the comic basically follows this evil guy who steals a bunch of stuff from people and wears a cool mask and has all the toys of James Bond at his disposal, but is pulling off major heists, and every now and then he will shoot somebody in the back. I think it's a really interesting movie. I think the original is really great, but I think with a budget it could be done in a really interesting way, and we right now have sort of a thirst for anti-heroes, and even the heroes that do make it to the screen and most times get turned into anti-heroes in one way or another. So I don't know. I think this would be a great time for a film like Danger Diabolic. Or another film also I think would be neat would be I guess not film but a character would I think it'd be a great time to bring Flash Gordon back or Buck Rogers, or something along those lines. Making one of those guys a contemporary space hero. I think that'd be really interesting, especially in a time when we have a new Star Wars movie come out. Why not take one of those classic characters and also update it and put it up against Star Wars? Try and do some new and different stuff with it. But those are just the first two thoughts that pop into my head. How about you guys?
Well, I would love to see a new Buck Rogers movie. I loved the old series on TV with Gil Gerard. And I love the old serials too. Buck Rogers is a great character. My only fear about that is they would try to emo him up like they did with Batman, and give us an edgier Flash Gordon. Where he's brooding all the time. That's my fear.
Yeah.
It's funny you brought up Flash Gordon, John. I was just talking about that this week with a friend of mine, and I love that movie.
Yeah.
If they remade it but sort of kept that fun, freewheeling spirit, I think it would be great. On the horror side, there's two movies I always prayed for them to remake. Tourist Trap.
Yes.
and Motel Hell.
Yeah.
I thought would be are kind of ripe for remake. And I like the originals, but like you said, I think with a budget, they could be really good remakes.
Now the key to me to horror remakes, or just any horror movie nowadays, just because you have a budget doesn't mean you got to use CG. We still want practical effects. We want real blood. So on the caveat that Motel Hell and Tourist Trap get remakes, I would only be for it if they used like 99% real effects.
Yes.
Absolutely agree with that. I think the movie that I would like to see remade, and this is going back a long time, would be The Best Years of Our Lives.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Simply because I think it could really be updated and do very well setting it in the Gulf War. And because that movie was so powerful, it's probably one of my top 3 favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
It's just such an incredibly powerful movie, and an anti-war movie at a time where that's not the kind of a movie that Hollywood was really known for.
It seems like now that would be tough to make without having some sort of political argument one way or another. Things have been so polarizing politically for a lot of war films, like American Sniper, being a great example.
Yeah.
I think that could be one of the things that would kind of mire that remake a little bit.
Unfortunately, I think you're probably right about that. Todd, do you have any last questions before we wrap this up?
Yeah, John, gun to your head. What are your top 3 favorite movies?
Oh man, why? Now I always make I always discern that favorite movies are totally different than best movies or movies that I think are the best. So,
I agree. I agree completely.
Probably one of my favorites is the original Highlander. I that's a stupid movie that again should have never been made, but just the fact that it was made and somehow all came together, that movie makes me really happy, and I'll watch that anytime it comes on. I love the original, not original, the Flash Gordon from what, 1980. I watch that thing. That's another movie. Anytime it's on, I'm down for it. And then I don't know, man, it's such a big toss up. What else would be on the list there? But I can watch Aliens like nobody's business too. I think that's just a top notch movie as well.
Awesome.
What are your top 3, Todd?
Okay, so gun to my head, my top 3 favorite, and I agree with John. Favorite has nothing to do with best, although I think mine are probably could be considered. So it's The Princess Bride, Office Space, and The Shawshank Redemption.
Okay, I would probably pick, I already said one of the best years of our lives, A Mighty Wind and Hellraiser.
Yeah. Interesting. Very cool.
Those are about 3 as different movies as you can get. But A Mighty Wind, whenever I'm feeling a little depressed, I put that movie on and I just grin like an idiot. There's just something about that movie and its humor that just really, it makes me feel good.
That's a good one.
Final question for me, John. What movies that are coming out the rest of the year that you're looking forward to?
Well, there's not a whole lot I'm real excited about. Movies that I kind of look forward to Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, just because those movies for the most part are really solid, and I still think Tom Cruise, like, he might be completely loony, but he's still like our greatest living action star, and definitely has been the greatest action star in the last 20 years, and so I'm looking forward to that. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing the new Fantastic Four, just because it's such a different look and feel than any other comic book movie that's come out this year. And then of course Star Wars, that's going to be a big one.
Absolutely.
I think Guillermo del Toro's new movie is one I'm looking forward to the most. The Crimson
Peak.
Crimson Peak.
Yeah.
That looks like it's going to be fantastic. At least I hope so.
Yeah, it really does. And thank goodness they're releasing that in October. It always drives me nuts when October comes around. There's only like 2 or 3 scary movies that come out in theaters.
Yeah, I never understood that. It's always September or November.
Yeah.
Well, guys, what about October? That's like the perfect time.
Yeah.
Well, John, I appreciate your coming on the show. I really enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey, likewise. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, I had a good time.
Okay, and we'll have links in the show page where you can find out more about John. You've got your website, John at the Movies, correct?
Yeah, but I've taken a break off, so I think the last thing on there is Get Hard, which is several months ago.
Okay.
Like I said, I've been laying pretty low the last few months, so you can find me on Twitter if you really want to, JOHN_ARY.
Okay, Twitter, and if you have a Roku, look him up on there.
You bet.
And you can also subscribe to the Imaginarium on iTunes, and if you like it, rate us and leave us a review. And if you did enjoy the show, check out our other podcasts in the Supernauts Network at thesupernauts.com, including Jailbait, my newest podcast with one and only UK filmmaker. He puts the hot and psychotic Wade Radford. And until next time, may all your journeys be filled with pure imagination.